Hey guys, welcome back to Football Index Moneyball. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a look back at my first year on the index, and in particular, I'm going to be looking at the things I know now that I really wish I had known on day one. If I think back now to the potential profits I probably missed out on because of these mistakes and not knowing these lessons, it makes me feel a little bit sick, but I had a great year on the index and I know these lessons now, so I'm excited to see where this season can take us with a much bigger starting portfolio value. If I could maintain 128% ROI, I would be over the moon, as I'm expecting slower growth from the index, but I would love to be wrong on that, and I find that my decision making is better if I have lower expectations and then outperform. In the video, I'm going to be covering 5 lessons which I've learned during my 13 months so far on the index. I chose these lessons for a combination of reasons, but they seem to be the things that I spend the most time explaining when helping new traders with their initial purchases in the first few months on the index. And they are the opposite of what I did when I started on the index, and I think it cost me quite a lot. So we're going to be looking at how to think about player prices and returns and best understand the profitability, what to expect when you're holding a player, how long you should hold for, how to react if they drop in value, including some examples of players I've held, the importance of understanding the way that you earn your money on Football Index and where you'll expect to see most of your profits coming from, how to decide how many players to buy in order to spread the risk. This in particular is one that I've had a lot of questions about, and it's actually something that my strategy's completely changed from when I started on the index to now. And then the importance of planning ahead when purchasing a player to ensure you have a good opportunity for profit and you understand the risks that you're taking on the player at a certain price. Just a reminder, if you do get any value or entertainment from the video and you want to help support the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when new videos are posted. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, then you can search @IndexMoneyball. So just before we get into it, this is a video for beginners, but I'm not going to really cover the basics. This is the Football Index Academy. I'm going to put a link for this in the description below. Any traders who haven't already been on here and read all the articles on new traders and existing traders, that's definitely the best place to start. I'm going to cover more of strategies for who to invest in, how to think about the index, rather than just the basic mechanics of how it works. There's other videos that do talk through the basics if you don't get enough information from the academy, but personally, there was plenty of info on there for what I needed when I started on the index. It was more the strategies that I needed to learn. So for the first lesson, and this is the one I believe to be the most important, it has to be forget about the pounds and the pence and think in percentages. Now what I mean by that is a penny for Neymar is not equal to a penny for Hazard and is not equal to a penny for Luca Pellegrini. Now I use Luca because he's the latest in my pick of the day video series, but Hazard and Neymar are both the same age, they both play in a similar position and they're both world class players, so they're very easy to compare. So whether it be increase in price, in-play dividends, media buzz or performance buzz, make sure you understand what you're signing up for when you pick one player to buy over another. If you were to buy Neymar over Hazard and Luca Pellegrini in this example, you are saying that you believe Neymar will make 1.7 times more than Hazard and 12.4 times more than Luca Pellegrini in the next 12 months, say, or whatever period of time your investing horizon is. So what that means is, if you look at the table on the screen now, if Neymar and Hazard were to return the same dividends as they did last year, and there's no saying that's going to be true, probably for Neymar he might get a little bit more because he's obviously going to have a lot of speculation now that he's stayed at PSG. And Hazard, on the other hand, has already moved to Madrid, so who knows how much attention he's going to get now he's out of the Premier League and also now that he's got his transfer. As a baseline, if you were to take those figures and then look at the price increase column, you can see the different price increases that you would need to see from each of those 3 players in order to make the same £50 return on a £100 investment. Obviously, everyone's got their own opinion, but I prefer to try and get the low-hanging fruit, and someone like Pellegrini, who has just been called up to the international team, he's a young player who Juventus have signed for 20 million and sent out on loan. I can see a 29p return being very, very achievable in the next 12 months. And I think with Neymar and Hazard, maybe it's achievable as well, but I think it's a little bit more difficult and they have to perform to achieve that. Either way, it's not about deciding which of these 3 players to pick from. The point is that you need to understand what you are expecting from the player you're picking when you decide to pick them over somebody else. Something to remember is it can seem more exciting when someone like Kevin De Bruyne wins the triple match day dividend for 7p and gets an increase of 20p on his price, in comparison to Luca Pellegrini rising 3 pence in price. In reality, these are pretty close to being the same return, 6.6% for De Bruyne and 5.4% for Luca. The next lesson that I think would have made a huge difference on my first day on the index is you have to understand your revenue streams. If you were to ask all the experienced traders on the index to look back at their profits and break them out over the 4 income streams, I guarantee they would all tell you the same thing. 70 to 90% of profits have come from price appreciation, 10 to 20% from media buzz, 5 to 10% from performance buzz, and 1 to 5% from IPD. To demonstrate this, here we've got the master stats table for all the football index players. Now, if you haven't subscribed to an index data analysis platform yet, I'd highly recommend Football Index Edge. This is the one that I'm using now. It's only £6.48 per month or £60 per year, and you get a free 14-day trial at the moment. So if you're interested, I'll put my referral link down below. Go check out the free trial, and I also have a link there for Football Index if you've not signed up yet. If you enjoy the video and you want to support the channel, then if you sign up through that link, then that'll be helping me out. If you're putting any significant amount of money into the index, I can tell you that it's definitely going to be worth the investment for an analysis platform. Even if it's just to reorientate your thinking to understand the minimal effect that dividends have on your profits at this stage of the index's growth. I say that because the index won't always be growing at this explosive rate. Eventually, player dividends, finding hidden gems and out of favour players who are underpriced will be the only way to make a profit, and at that time you'll start to see some people even losing money on the platform, which can seem a bit unbelievable to most traders now. I've organised this chart to show the highest matchday earners at the top, and here you can see Lionel Messi is the highest matchday earner with 47 pence in the last 12 months. An interesting thing about this is when you see his media dividends over here, he actually made 80p in media dividends. So even the highest earning performance player on the index earned more in media than he did in performance. If we take a look at the second place matchday dividend earner, it's Daniel Parejo with 31 pence. So he was more than 30% below Messi. By the time you drop down to 20th place, which is Alejandro Gomez, you can see that he only made 14p in matchday dividends. That means anyone below that made less than 14p. Bearing in mind that dividends have increased an average 26% and now Euro qualifiers have been added as match days, it's probably safe to assume that if a player costs more than £2 and isn't someone you'd expect to be in the top 20 matchday dividend earners for the year, then you're only going to be making up to 10% profit from performance buzz. So what you're really looking for is price appreciation, which is spurred by PB wins. In which case you need to make sure that there's room for those increases and that the player doesn't need to just win PB to maintain his price, which puts you at risk. On screen now, I've got a table where I've extracted the revenue from the master stats table for Messi, Neymar, Pogba and Kevin De Bruyne, just to illustrate my point a bit better. Now you can see the price appreciation for each player is far more than any of the other 3 income sources combined for each. For Messi, even his media buzz was 60% more than his performance buzz. As we saw, he was the top PB earner in the last 12 months. Now, as far as the in-play dividends go, if you imagine that your player hit a hot streak and gets 12 goals or assists in the first 30 days you own him, which is very unlikely, but even so, the 12p would be insignificant in relation to your other income streams. Now, I'm not trying to say that IPD should be completely disregarded, but you should just be aware of that. So the major points for this lesson are, the price you buy a player for and the potential price rise you see in him based on similar players is far and away the most important factor to consider when analysing a purchase. I've heard of some players choosing to hold off on buying due to poor in-play dividend fixtures coming up over the next 30 days and wait until the day that their next play a game to try and increase the number of fixtures they're eligible for. Something important to consider with this strategy, if the player was to rise 5 pence between the time where you were going to buy him and when you did buy him because of the game day, then you would have to see him score or assist 5 times in the first 30 days in order to just recoup that 5 pence. So for those of you who saw my how I made 12k in the first year, you'll have seen some of this already, but I just wanted to come over to the index and do a bit of an example on this. So if we look at Paco Alcacer's graph, at the beginning of last season he had a real good run of form and his price rose pretty significantly. Now, if you'd have bought in towards the top of that rise before his form dropped, then you would have been stuck holding a player, either having to wait for him to come back to form, which has took until July of this year from October of last year for him to reach the same level of price, or you're going to have to sell him for a loss. Now, if you had made a few dividends when he was really on form, then those would soon be eradicated by that kind of loss in price. It looks to me like he went from around £1.21 average down to 77 pence average. So, as you can see, he's definitely not going to have made that many dividends in that short period at the beginning of the season when he was on form. So you'll be pleased to know the next three points are a lot shorter. The first 2 needed a bit of analysis to support them, but the next ones are a bit more straightforward. So this next section is probably the lesson that I've learned most recently, and that is patience is key, but fail quickly. What I mean by this is that if you're making the good selections on players, sometimes it can seem like things are moving slowly. Most underpriced players will stay just at or below what you bought them for, until they do something that catches the attention of the rest of the market or until there's speculation of a transfer. This is often the case when investing in players who've had a bad season and are fighting to make their way back into the team, players recovering from injury, and young players who haven't made it into the first team yet. Anyone who's owned a young player when they do finally make their debut can tell you that the price can really explode in a very short period of time, but you need to be patient, as a couple of months on the index can sometimes feel like a lifetime. Having said that though, the second part of this lesson is it can sometimes be really difficult to admit your mistakes and lock in a loss by selling a player. I know I spent a lot of time last year holding on to players who were down 10 to 20%, stubbornly waiting for them to recover before selling. But now if I've made an assumption that turns out to be wrong, or if I bought a player that was just a plain error of judgment or an act of emotion, following a news story or a good performance, if there's another player that's better value or more opportunity to growth, I'd rather just sell out quickly and move on with my new pick who I've got more confidence in. So for my fourth point, this is actually one that I've seen quite a bit on Twitter recently, and I actually responded to someone today on this topic, but it's don't be scared of consolidating in a few players. This is one that I've been trying to work on myself recently as I've been reviewing my trades in my portfolio for these videos. I noticed I had some really positive results from the players who at the time I'd felt very strongly were undervalued and were going to offer a good chance of returns. But instead of following my gut, I chose to spread my money around and try and get lots of small positions to spread the risk. I've now realised that if I had just backed myself and stuck to my top 20 picks, then I would have seen much higher profits. If you deposit regularly, then each time you deposit, the top 3 or 4 players who you think offer the best value will change. So over time, your portfolio will naturally become diversified. The one player I did decide to consolidate in has been a great one for me, which was Pogba. I saw how much he was winning the media dividends at the start of last season, and at the time his price was £3.58. I thought that the rate he was winning dividends and the continued speculation around his future, he would be the biggest earner on the index and therefore should be the highest price. Now at the time, Neymar was the highest priced at around £5, so using that as my price target along with my dividends that I was planning on getting, I committed and put around a third of my total capital into him. Since then, he's returned more than double in his price and he's won 60% of his original purchase price in dividends. And I've never bought another share in him because after that day, he was always too expensive and didn't offer the same value, and I believed other players were going to offer a better profit. When you have money to deposit and you choose 10 players to spread it over, that means the 10th player you picked is worse investment than the first 9. I'm a bad culprit of this myself, but I've now learned that it's much better to sit down and calculate what you really expect to get from each player in return, and then narrow it down to 2, 3 or 5 that you think are going to offer the strongest potential for profits. The more you water down your portfolio with decent picks, the less effective your big winners are going to be on your overall ROI and total profit. So before I get into the final section, I've got a bonus tip for you. Now I've been looking back at the purchases from my first 3 deposits on the index. There's a clear pattern which I should have known about, as I've been doing the same thing in fantasy football and sports betting for years. And that is getting overly distracted by your own team. Of course, everyone's football knowledge is going to be strongest in their own team's players. Now that could be a big asset for finding young talent or spotting mispriced players coming back from injury or a bad run of form. But just make sure you do the proper research in terms of the cost of comparable players and the past dividend returns on each player before jumping in. I locked up a lot of money in 4 or 5 players from my team who, if I could go back today, I wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole at the prices they were trading at. So anyway, let's get into the final lesson. This one can be a little bit painstaking. So if you don't have a huge amount of money in the index, it might not always be worth it to you. You'll have to figure that out for yourself. But it has huge potential to improve your ROI dramatically. And that is to have a plan for your picks before purchasing. Whenever you have money on the index and you're thinking of buying a player, you should ideally have a few options and you should work out a plan for each. And in this plan, you should include a top and bottom price range target, conservative target for media buzz and performance buzz, and a conservative estimate for IPDs if there are any. So just as an example, I'll talk you through the process that I went through when I was buying Pogba about a year ago. Now at the time, his current price was £3.58. I believed the market was growing pretty rapidly, so I used Neymar's current price as £5 as my low target, and then I used Neymar plus 30% for my high target of £6.50. In this example, all the price targets are 12 months, by the way. Some players may have shorter target hold durations, but it just depends on the strategy and why you're buying the player. So anyway, that gave me a target price appreciation profit of 40 to 81%. After checking his PB and media history on Football Index Edge, I did 10p of PB and £1 of media, which was his last 12 months return. I was fairly confident he would exceed this, which as you probably know he absolutely crushed in the end. And at the time there was no IPD, so that wasn't a concern. This gave me an estimated dividend return of 30% to add to the 40 to 81% from price appreciation, which came to a total of 70 to 110% profit. Once I'd done this, having erred on the conservative side in my estimates, I was confident that putting a third of my total portfolio into him was a good investment. And I can tell you now that if I hadn't sold out of half my position when he reached £5, Or better yet, if I'd have chosen to put even more of my capital in at the time and still held him today, my profit would be a lot higher. If I ever found another player who I felt had as strong a case as I did for Pogba, I would probably be selling a good portion of my portfolio and trying to pile in as much money as I can as fast as I can. So that's about all I have for today's video. I put a lot of thought into this one. I really tried to go through my football index experience and think of the shifts in knowledge and mindset that I feel have been game changers for me in terms of profitability. I'd love to hear any feedback in the comments. If you have any questions on the strategies from the video, are there any other important lessons that you think I might have missed? Or if you disagree and have a counter argument to any of the points, I'd be really interested to hear those too. You can also now find me on Twitter, so if you want to follow me on there, you just have to search @IndexMoneyball. And finally, if you haven't liked and subscribed already, then please do go do that. And if you want to be notified when new videos come out, you can hit the bell icon. This includes my pick of the day series, which I'm putting out about 3 times a week so far. And the last pick actually is up 20% in the last 6 days since I recorded, so it's nice to get some positive movement on a pick. My strategies are usually a lot more long term, so not all of them are going to be like this, but still, if you missed it, go check that out. Thanks for watching and good luck on the index.